Hi, this is Andre. I'm your provocateur, and I have a thought for you today about rich families. This comes from some ideas from Al-Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun, an Arab thinker and writer, and he wrote some essays about the idea of dynastic succession. Dynasties start with a great man, and that great man has the values and ethics of, according to Ibn Khaldun, of the tribe, of the desert, of the people that he comes from, and he knows what suffering means, and he knows what hardship means. This great man comes out of the desert and comes out of the hardship and has these noble values and virtues. And he struggles and he reaches his goals of attaining power or attaining the government. And so the interesting thing about this theory is that his son then will become the next king in the traditional Arab societies. And his son knows his father, but he doesn't truly know the ethic of the desert and the tribe in the same way that his father does. But he does know his father, and he knows his father's habits, and he imitates his father's habits. The second generation of this dynasty is also a strong one, but they are strong on the basis of their relationship not to the original principles that made the dynasty strong, but they're strong because of their relationship to the father, the generation before. And then Ibn Khaldun goes on to talk about the third generation and the fourth generation, and how the values and ethics which made the dynasty strong become diluted and become weaker as the dynasty succeeds from generation to generation. And this made me think a lot about the idea of the rich family. A rich family can be wealthy because of some talent and hard work on the part of the older generation of the family, but the younger kids of the family, sometimes they can be hardworking and they can succeed because of the expectations of their parents, but not because of some internal drive that says that they want to succeed or that they want to work hard and do well. And then sometimes, very often, that third generation, they just go about squandering the wealth that's been accumulated by their parents. But if you think about that third generation, and I'm thinking of a few people that I know, very often they look wealthy. They look just like the first. Sometimes they look more wealthy than the first generation. Very often the first generation isn't ostentatious about their wealth. Sometimes they are. But the third generation also looks wealthy, but very often they're not, in fact, wealthy. They're wealthy only because they have borrowed so much money against the things that they own. Their net worth may be zero, or it may be greatly negative because of all the debt that they've gotten themselves into. But they continue to have the spending habits and the lifestyle of the generations before them. They look wealthy. And why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because this is not just an economic principle of dynasties and wealthy families. It's also a spiritual principle that we can see in the nations of the world. And I believe that we can see it here in America, that the wealth, the spiritual wealth of America, which led to strong culture, to productive society, a society that protected the poor, and so on. The spiritual wealth of the country that said the leaders should serve, that the greatest should take care of the least in society, that the wealthy people of society have a responsibility to the poor of society based on love and Christian ethic. These values have obviously been to some degree rejected in terms of the Christian root of the value. In the second and third generations, the understanding of why are we good, why do leaders serve, why should we be honest, why should we be fair and just in our dealings with others, the reasons have in the original generation were because that is what Christ asks of us, and because of Christian values, because of love for one's neighbor and love for God, and recognition that we are in need and that we have been saved because we ourselves are also sinners, and how important it is for us to live lives of holiness in gratefulness to God. That was the original generation. The second generation, to a large part, and it's not only strictly one generation, but it's this trajectory of the following attitude after that is, well, we should be good because that's how our culture is, or that's how our parents were, or that's the way we have been taught is the polite way to behave, or that is the right thing to do. Rather than knowing why we do it because we do it. And then at some point, that particular position is to some degree unstable, and after time, that erodes further, and people begin to question, well, why do we do these things? And why must we? Why should this be polite? Why isn't it better for me to love myself? Isn't it more important for me to look after myself? And gradually, and we're talking about percentages here, you know, you could have 2% of the society be thieves, and it doesn't tear down the whole society, and 3% and 4% and 5%, and when you get to a certain point, let's say, I don't know what the percentage is, but when you get to a certain point, then the society undergoes severe repercussions because of that. But what I'm talking about now is this moral sense, and this Christian sense within society has unquestionably led to a society where rights originated, and where freedom for captives was proclaimed, and where all kinds of, obviously there was much injustice, but also much good, and certainly of the nations of the earth among the best. The best nations of the earth are no doubt those that have proclaimed the Christian values. But what is happening now in this later generational stage is that people are losing track of these ideas. Just like the wealthy kids in the family that have grown up with so much wealth that they just feel that they're entitled to it, and that's just the way their family lives, and then they've begun to just squander all that wealth. Well, we are undergoing that same thing in America. We are sort of coasting on the gains of the past, I believe, at the same time as questioning the ethics of the past that said we must work hard. That's in the case of the rich family. Or that said we must be honest. And I talked briefly in one of my other videos about how the economic collapse of America was very much related to a lot of tiny moral failures. And I say tiny between quotes, where lots of people lied on income statements to get mortgages, and it led to an enormous economic consequence. And as those little lies, because we seem to be getting away with it, as those little lies grow, and the acceptance of a little bit of corruption here and there grows, we can still coast on the good credit of our forefathers and the reputation of America. But at some point, that foundation erodes enough to where collapse happens, as I talked about in another video. This house, this wealthy family, has gone from being wealthy because they were hardworking, intelligent, and diligent to they've become wealthy because they've always been wealthy, and they've mortgaged off everything else, and it's become a house of cards. And I hate to see that happen, but it seems to be happening.